Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with tonight's workshop, Designing a Curriculum Around the Elements and Principles of Design. My name is Jessica Balsley, and I am the founder of The Art of Education. And I'm just so thrilled to see art teachers from all around the world joining us tonight. Veterans, student teachers, first-year teachers, a little bit of everyone. And I'm hoping there's a little something for each of you to glean from tonight's workshop. So the reason I chose this topic is because I know when you're thinking about the elements and principles of design, seems like a basic foundation for starting your curriculum, but curriculum is such a big job, it's hard to know where to start. So I'm going to walk you through some philosophy behind curriculum development and then give you some samples of how to incorporate those elements and principles into any art curriculum. So first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about the process of curriculum review. It can be very, very daunting. My art department went under a huge curriculum review. I was the curriculum facilitator, and at that time we had a district-wide initiative, and we had our first curriculum meeting, and this lady marched in with our team, and she said, well, I'm the math coordinator, and I don't know why they put me with the art team, but I guess we're stuck together this year rewriting our curriculum. And we all thought, oh boy, what are we in for? Because it's just, we didn't feel like we were valued. Oh, and then she said, and I ordered 5 sets of textbooks. They're over by the wall. Go ahead and choose a textbook, and once you've picked one, then we'll go through our review process using those materials. And as art teachers, we were just kind of floored. We're like, textbook in art? And I know some exist, and I know they can be good resources, but we had no idea that was how this process was going to start. And so we kind of just took a step back and said to ourselves, yes, we could get a textbook to supplement, but we'd really prefer to keep our curriculum our own, to design it ourselves. And I firmly believe that every art teacher should design his or her own curriculum, and most of us do, because we know our students best. We know our demographics, we know our community, we can incorporate things from our local area, and we know what our strengths are and our weaknesses, and we can kind of work towards those. So anyhow, we all decided we would just write it ourselves, and we would just purchase resources to supplement this curriculum. And in our curriculum review process, we went through a ton of things. So this PDF will be available to you, but there's a whole list here off to the right is a checklist for reviewing your curriculum, which might be very helpful. And I mean, a lot of the things we went through are, we first started out with developing our why, which I'll go into here tonight, getting our standards put together, linking to state and national standards, writing our consensus maps, doing common vocabulary, focusing on the elements and principles, art history, cross-curricular connections, technology integration. Are you getting tired yet? How we are going to, have an assessment plan to do these, public course descriptions for our community. It's a lot of stuff. And this is not something that happens overnight. I'm not going to go through all of these today, but I am going to go through some of the first on the list, as well as, talking about the spiraling curriculum. But curriculum can be daunting. I absolutely know that, but doing your own curriculum can be the most rewarding and beneficial thing you do as an art teacher, because I think it's kind of fun. It's like a puzzle you're always putting together, and as I said in the comment section, you are absolutely never done with your curriculum until the day you're done teaching, because your students change, initiatives change, and there's always new ideas out there for you, such as Pinterest, which has kind of changed the way we design our curriculum a little bit. So next I'm going to go into the first step of curriculum design. Before you even get to this elements and principles portion, my favorite thing to do with art teams is talking about developing our why. And the why behind your curriculum. What's the motivation? What's the big thing? And there's a great TED Talk by Simon Sinek. It's called How Great Leaders Inspire Action. And his whole thing that he goes off of is saying people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And so his golden circle says that, what we do is teach art. Or I'm just applying this to art. He says that it can apply to anything in life. How we do it is through materials, through our school, but why we do it is why people care. And so if parents don't really know what you do or how you do it, but they know why you do it, what you're passionate about, why art is important, why your curriculum, why. What is your why? And so I ask art teachers to really stop and think, what's the reason I got into teaching in the first place? What was my motivation for it? What do I believe is the most important thing about teaching art if students could take away one main thing? And so if you have your curriculum by yourself, You may come up with your own internal why. You can probably think of it right now. But if you're with a large group of 10 or more art teachers like I was, we all had to agree on a why. Well, my why was different than his why, was different than her why, and so that kind of became quite the conversation. Curriculum isn't always personal, but sometimes it's group. You have to come to consensus. And so, that can be very tricky, and I'll talk about that process we had. But I'm just kind of curious, as you think about what's your why behind your curriculum, the elements and principles, maybe it's art history. I'm going to do a quick poll here just to see what you would think, if you could say off the top of your head, if you had to pick one, what would the why behind your curriculum be? And I know it's hard to pick one because you're going to be doing all of these things, but your why should drive everything you do in your curriculum. Creativity is kind of pulling in for the lead here, which I think we all kind of feel in our hearts, but sometimes it's harder to do than, it's harder to actually implement than we think, isn't it? Great. There's a great mix here. Interestingly enough, art history kind of came in last, and that would have been my why, actually, when I was teaching. So it's so fun how we all have our own kind of motivations behind what we do. I'm going to go ahead and close voting. Thanks for the information, though. I think just keep that in the back of your mind while we talk about this and when you're designing your own curriculum. The next thing I want to talk about is a spiraling curriculum. So once you have your why, you want to think about all the things you're going to teach that will actually link back to that why. And they're not always going to just be the elements and principles. You're going to do all these other things. But a good curriculum spirals. And what I mean by spiraling is concepts revisit. So if you actually went to your math department and asked to see their curriculum, you would see addition and subtraction and division and fractions spiraling through their curriculum. They might get it a little bit in kindergarten, build upon it all year long in first grade. It reoccurs not only in that grade level, but it reoccurs throughout the whole K-12 math program or even K-8 math program. Well, in art, sometimes we forget about this. We think, well, I have to teach so many things. Sometimes I think teaching art can just be about simple exposure, that we forget about the spiraling. And our art team decided the elements and principles of design would be the thing we'd come together on as the most important backing for our curriculum. Did we all agree necessarily? No. But we all could agree that the elements and principles were an important thing that we wanted to infuse. We would still do all those other wonderful things. And so we wanted to make sure that students got color, line, shape at every single grade level all across our curriculum. Have you ever talked with the middle school, let's say you're an elementary art teacher, and you talked with the middle school art teacher, and they're like, well, these students come to me and they don't know anything about color. They just don't know they're mixing their colors. They don't know their color wheel. Like, well, I taught it in 5th grade. They should know that. Well, it's just kind of funny because just because we teach it once does not mean students get it. You know, they could have been checked out that day. They have 1,000 other things going on in their little lives. And so I'm sure you've experienced that before. Well, a spiraling curriculum, K-12, K-5, or even within one grade level, helps revisit ideas to make sure kids are hitting it. So we could safely say at the end of 12th grade, we know students had exposure to these things every single year. And it really helped us validate our art program and hopefully see growth. Hopefully the students in 7th grade would come in much higher level after 5 years of going through this curriculum because of their background they've had, because we could guarantee that they had those things. And so I cannot stress enough that revisiting things is a good thing. We think we taught it and we're bored of it, but students don't always get it every time. And so revisiting is part of a spiraling curriculum. So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind with anything you do. How are you going to revisit these things so that students can get more exposures to them? So next tonight, I'd like to go through some samples because I know, again, curriculum is one size fits all, but I've also heard from art teachers saying, but I need a sample. I need an example. How do you do it? I can relate it to myself then. I can take it and I can run with it. But samples are helpful. So this is not an end-all, be-all. These examples are just that, examples, and you can get hopefully some ideas to build your own curriculum from it. Before I move into those exact examples, I want to talk about organizing your curriculum, because when I give you all this information next, you're going to be like, well, how do I organize this? Where do I put it? My very favorite thing to use to organize a curriculum is a consensus map, but I like to just call them maps. And these maps or year at a glance. You could do trimester at a glance, and I like to have my whole year on one page. What am I going to teach in this month? What's the concept? Make sure I'm hitting each art element. Make sure I'm hitting each art history concept, and I can see it all right there. And I have put together a ton of blank matrices and packaged them up in a free little ebook for you. It's a Designing Your Art Curriculum Art Teacher's Workbook. And so Derek is going to throw that link to that free ebook in the chat section so you can access all these matrices and just look at all the ways you can organize your curriculum to help you build in. So you may want to take some time and look through those later, but I may reference some of them, or that'll give you a point of reference for all the things that I will be sharing tonight. But I definitely think having maps, even if it's just for you, I don't care if there's 10 art teachers having to do the same thing, because that's what we had to do. We all had to teach the same things at the same time. We all had to have the same maps, but we could do different art projects. But even for you, it's just great to be organized, whether there's 2 of you, 1 of you, or 10 of you. So the first element I am going to go through, I'm going to go through some of the big elements of design, and I'll talk about the principles at the end here, how we use those. And the biggies can be helpful to you, and I'm going to show you how we spiraled them and how we built the curriculum. So you think about line and you think, how am I going to make sure I have line in every aspect of my curriculum at every grade level, or 3 times throughout 8th grade art? And so I have built these kind of from more basic to advanced, from the top down. And here's how we built upon line. So for example, producing the basic line types would be something for kindergarten or 1st grade, where they can just show you that they can actually draw them through whatever project. The projects don't matter, the units don't matter, these are just mini skills that you might be looking for throughout a project. Then, after you can produce the lines, the next natural step would be using them to create a composition. Can students make something out of lines? Simple drawing, but how do you build it? Line of symmetry, which is a little more into shape, but it's still kind of a interesting take on line. Then moving towards using lines to create optical illusions. How can lines make our eyes look at things in different ways? Using lines next for observational drawing, so to not only make something, but make something I see. And then gesture drawing, how can line change? How can different lines produce different feelings? Especially at this at the high school level here, they worked a lot on these different line types. You can see the apple exercise was a high school exercise in the Art 1 class. So elements and principles in the curriculum I experienced went from K through Art 1. They hit it a little in 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then Art 1 was kind of hitting them all. And then once you branch off into the pottery, the painting, the jewelry, those classes, it was just the elements and principles were a base for everything that the teachers did in those advanced classes. They didn't actually cover line, but they covered it, but it was content-based, if that makes sense for you. And so they worked on different line personalities, like structural, outline, contour line, gesture drawing, sketching, calligraphy. You can see how line has so many different little mini parts to it. I'm sure you could even add more to the list. And if you have some great exercises or ideas to add to this, feel free to put them in the comments form. I mean, we're all here to share. This is what this is about. I don't have all of the answers. I'm just wanting to give you some samples so you can get started or get some new ideas to incorporate into your own. So that's kind of the hierarchy of line, how you could build it in your curriculum. Whether it's K-12, K-6, or within 1 grade level, you could do a couple of these. I'm going to move on to shape here. Shape, the first step in building on this concept of shape would be for students to independently produce shapes, draw them. And I believe that the first step, even before that, is tracing. And I know we've had some articles and controversy about tracing and should there be tracing or not, but I honestly think that tracing gives that muscle memory. You sometimes you trace letters of your name before you can write them. So we trace shapes in kindergarten, and then moving on to producing them themselves in a piece of artwork. And then in 1st grade or 2nd, moving on to using shapes to build forms. So now that you know how to draw the shapes, what can you make with shapes? And this honestly could kind of go to the higher grades as well. Working with organic and geometric shapes, get a little more complex. Then working on shape with symmetry, bilateral and radial symmetry. Those have some really great possibilities for the curriculum and some fun projects that can go along with those, and then tessellating shapes, which how fun is that? And it's still shape, it's just how can shapes fit together? Where do we see that in our everyday life? And shape transcends to the older grade levels. They were working with some of these same concepts in elementary as well as through middle school and Art 1. You just do more advanced things with them. It's really quite basic when you break it down. The next element of design I'd like to go through a continuum of is color. Color is a big one. A lot of art teachers, when I say to them, what is the one thing you would be embarrassed about if your students walked out of art and didn't know? And a lot of teachers, color. Can they mix colors? Do they know the primary colors, the secondary? It's kind of like that color wheel is something like stamped on the art teacher's forehead. Like, we need to always teach color somehow, but the basic color wheel can get kind of drab and boring. So here are some ways to kind of break down color for you in your curriculum, and you can see and you can kind of see how it builds. Obviously, the primary colors are where you'd start. Moving into secondary and then intermediate. And we worked with those primary colors, first in K and K1, secondary colors K3, or 2 and 3, intermediate colors moving into the 4th and 5th. And then, of course, in the middle school, the students would then make the entire wheel again, and they would move into more advanced colors and have less supports when making those colors. Another fun way to dive into color, monochromatic color with tints and shades, which could apply to any grade level, warm, cool, and neutral colors, complementary colors, and other color harmonies. And this is a great tie to design, things with color schemes and graphic design and things like that. It's all about color. So we can tie this to practical application. And then you can get into science and the Common Core and color, linking things like hue, spectrum, pigment, intensity. I know in the Art 1 class they really go into all the science and all the other parts of it. And again, this would not all happen, I don't think, in one grade. You wouldn't do all this in 3rd grade. This is how color could be spread out from a K-12 experience. All the little things you could hit. And you would revisit a lot of them as well, adding harder things as you went. I like how everyone is giving lots of great ideas and comments in the comment section. This is why we're here, to learn, to share. This is why you're here live, so I really appreciate your contributions. Someone asked, do you review all of this from year to year or each year add a new standard? I usually would add a new one every year and then review the past each year. If you're doing something like a student growth goal with color, you'll want to revisit that color, primary, secondary, several times throughout that 1 year, because you need to have multiple data points. So that could kind of be another way to spiral or revisit within the year, not just hitting it in September, but hitting it all year long throughout different projects. The next one I want to go through is form, and a lot of, we only had really time for ceramics, so that was the big way that we incorporated form into the curriculum, but there are so many other ideas I know, I just couldn't even begin to add them for form. But how we built up things for our ceramics curriculum, and I really liked how this built, it was really worked slick for us, was first, kindergarten, 1st grade would be pinch and pull. Maybe a pinch pot or pulling little animals out of a piece of clay. Then in 2nd grade, moving on to coil. In 3rd grade, slab construction. And then 4th grade, additive and subtractive, which was really hard, but the students actually got it. And then moving on in 5th grade, what we ended up doing, and 5th through 8th actually, they had to incorporate all of these into projects where they had a little more freedom. For example, doing something like clay food or a clay picture frame or something in ceramics that brought those multiple things that they were built upon, because they're just building blocks. They're like the letters that form the words that form the sentences when you look at ceramics. Plus, there are so many great projects with sculpture, mask making. I think the elements and principles themselves are kind of boring personally. I don't say, students, we're going to learn about line today. I try to have that hook be something with art history, something with their community, their life. And through that, I teach the elements and principles, because, exercises are sometimes like the ticket gateway to boring. Students don't always have to know they're learning about it till it kind of comes up and they're doing it. And you let them know about the line types, but it's kind of, we're going to learn about the elements of design today, So think about that too. How are you infusing it? What are you hooking with? Because sometimes these are hooks themselves and sometimes it's the media that's the hook, not necessarily the element of design. We will be providing this entire PDF so you can look at these lists that we've created and some other resources within the next 2 days on the Art of Ed as well with this recording, so you can revisit it or share with a friend. The next one I'm going to go through, which is a biggie, is space. I think we think about space in so many art projects, and it's a really important one. So in kindergarten or lower grades, to start with the simple terms like above, below, in front, behind. Put your name behind or on the back of your artwork. Put your name in the bottom corner. Make sure the clouds are in the top by the sky. I know that's kind of a art teacher faux pas, but just those words about space will help students create art and keep going with their artwork. Then using overlapping. How does overlapping create depth? What is overlapping? Foreground, middle ground, background, your basic perspective drawing kind of can come in next. Then using positive and negative space, which is the image you see here, A Positive Negative People by Heather. It's a lesson that she created. She's on our AOE team. Then moving into the 1 point and 2 point perspective at the middle school and upper elementary level, which all of these other things kind of build upon getting to that perspective when you look at space and art. And then also thinking about creating depth through optical illusions. Op art can fall into a lot of different elements and principles, but I think it's, again, a great hook for students to kind of see it in a really cool light. And it's not just we are drawing a 1 point perspective box. It's more than that. It's creating something. So you can see how those would build, and like I said, the Art 1 curriculum and the 8th grade curriculum, the older, they're doing all of these things in a more advanced way. So it's not repeat, it's not considered redundant, it's considered building, spiraling your curriculum. Those are the main elements I'm going to go through. I know this is only going to be about a 30-minute workshop, and that will hopefully get you started with that continuum. There are a lot of other elements and principles I didn't cover. The principles of design seemed a little advanced for our elementary and middle school groups sometimes, but movement and pattern are so important. So what we chose to do is we picked one grade level to do an element, a principle at the end, the last month of the year. So we went through all the elements of design, and then at the end, 3rd grade got movement. Kindergarten got pattern. So we hit them throughout the K-5 experience. It's just everybody didn't get them every year because there was no time. We saw the students the same amount, and I'm sure you do, some of you do too. I saw my students the same amount in one whole year that the classroom teacher saw them in one whole week. So by the end of the first week of school, the classroom teacher had already had more contact time than I ever would that whole year. So you can't do it all. In the end, it is kind of exposure to some of these concepts. But the more we can spiral, the more they will start to infuse and become a part of those students' daily vocabulary. And they'll see art as important. Oh, these things are coming up again. I'm not just coming in here and doing whatever I want. This is something that's foundational, important to art. Okay, I digress. So the next slide I have up is the spiraling media. So you might say this after you get your elements and principles, there's other things you want to make sure. So media is another thing you want to make sure that is in your curriculum and is solid and spirals. For example, I am not a fan, or wasn't a fan, of weaving, and ceramics and printmaking scared me to death when I started teaching, and especially weaving. So what I would do is I would just avoid weaving at all costs with my students, and I would do the simplest weaving, and I would never push the envelope, and I said, I'll try it next year. This year's really busy. And I never did weaving, and I was doing my students a disservice because I didn't feel comfortable with that media. And that wasn't fair. Well, when we get this new curriculum, we all had to do weaving. We all had to do printmaking once a year. We all had to do everything because that's what's fair to kids. We can't sacrifice our curriculum for our own interest. It's about putting together a package that is art for our students. And so I actually grew and loved weaving in the end. I mean, I had 4th graders, and my principal, I invited her in, and I said, come watch the students weave. And they had their little cardboard looms, and they wove little squares, not pot holders, with their actual weaving with yarn, and it was just fabulous. The boys loved it. I mean, I loved weaving, but I had to try it. Somebody had to say, go for it, just do it. And so this kind of forced me to, but if you don't have someone to force you, just do it. Just try it. Go out on a limb. The students will understand and you'll rock it. I know you will. So we came up with this matrix to say, how are we going to incorporate weaving at each level? What are some suggestions? These were a little looser, so maybe it's just for drawing, make sure you're using these materials when you draw at least once throughout the K-5 experience. Or for painting, make sure that students are getting a mix of tempera, watercolor pencils, trying some different media there. It wasn't necessarily super strict, but think about your media and really think about how you might build it. Even if you can't do it at every grade level, even once or twice throughout a K-5 experience or once throughout the middle school experience would be helpful to help students and see what they like and see what they can do. So this grade level media matrix to help you, is in that free ebook. I'll have Derek put it in the comment form again so that you can definitely access that and see how you can tweak it for your own. Use it, tweak it, share it, I don't care. It's just a basic idea to kind of help you get there. So that's the end of this specific presentation on the elements and principles of design and creating a curriculum. There's so much more to creating curriculum. It's mind-blowing, but I just wanted to focus on this specific topic, and I'm going to hang around for a little Q&A here on the topic of curriculum design. We have tons of resources here at AOE for curriculum. We have ebooks, we have a PD pack for your art department, we have an online grad class that goes so deep into it, 120 hours of contact time for that class. So this is just touching the surface, but hopefully you got some things to help you, and I will just stick around to answer questions, and then after that I will be doing a few FAQs or some heads up about some new AOE events that are happening and some deadlines that are coming up with what's new on AOE. So for the Q&A, looks like we had some great conversation going on too. Oh, I'm glad I saw some people from Indiana here. If you would like PD hours for tonight, if you need them, you can email help@theartofed.com and Sarah will hook you up with something if you're logging hours. And yes, we will be recording this entire presentation with a PDF. I'll try to add some more links in there too, that free ebook, some more articles that we've written on curriculum so that you can get all of that on AOE in an article within the next 2 days. We will be putting that up for you along with this exact recording. It's great to come live though because you can get your questions answered and kind of interact with everyone. Just looking at the questions here. If you email help@theartofed.com and need some hours from the past webinar, Sarah will help you. She's our customer happiness guru. Maybe she could put those all in one certificate for you. You're welcome, everyone. I'm so glad. We do a free workshop like this every single month. So just check the workshops page. We'll announce times and dates. And the dates vary just depending on schedules. So, but every month there's a free 30-minute workshop on hot topics in art ed, whatever teachers are telling us that they need. What if your guidelines are not spiraled 100% but you have to adhere to them? Not sure about that, how to answer that exact question. You know, I tried to make the curriculum work for me when it wasn't spiraling 100%, and we had to have it spiral, but we just tried to make it work the best we could for us. Sometimes you can't do it all. Sometimes you can't put everything in there. There's a great talk here about the artistic development and how the two match up. You know, there's so much more to curriculum than just this. There's the fine motor, the art skills. There's also the big ideas, the creative process. This is just sort of a foundation to get you where you're going, but all that is still happening throughout all these basics. It's just one way to start when designing. Some people start the exact opposite way. So it's just totally dependent on your personality, but I think we're all doing it all. There's a ton of middle school samples in a lot of our curriculum ebook, curriculum course, and I'll try to put some middle school articles on this recording as well. So yeah, definitely. What grade would you teach drawing on a grid? We have a lesson for that starting around on the AOE website. I think it's a 7th grade lesson. I personally never did it in the K-5. I think 6, 7 would be a great place to start that personally. Well, I think that, oh, Jessica, do you base your courses on the American National Standards or are they more general? My classes with for a K-12 art curriculum, all of these concepts I've talked about can link to the national standards. And the new national standards, core art standards, are coming out this spring, which we're going to be doing tons of resources and PD for you on. But I mean, this is stuff that can link to most any standard, creating, responding, understanding art history, all of the state standards and national standards. A lot of these concepts will go. I don't link personally because every state is so different. I don't link. You can make those connections, but they're all broad enough to do so. I just think you should, in addition to following national and state standards, I believe teachers should have their own mini standards, their power standards, their specific concepts to guide them, because we know we can always link back, if that makes sense. Common Core and Art, there's in the planning matrices, you will see definitely tons of empty fields for things like adding in Common Core. Okay, I'm doing bilateral symmetry in 2nd grade. The math department is also doing that. We're going to connect and do it the same month and have a big symmetry month. And there's definitely fields for that in all the planning matrices. There's fields for everything. You have to include it all, just not all the time. Some time you have to kind of pick and choose. So incorporating technology is another field you'll see in those planning matrices in that free ebook. And I know you can't incorporate tech with every project. I would aim for even just one technology connection in 2nd grade that whole year. Because again, there was so much art to be created. And there's many ways to incorporate the technology. So our Tech Ready Teacher class that we have and iPads in the art room are 2 really great ways to get some tech going in your own teaching strategies and also with your students. Someone's asking, how do you choose the power standards? In standards-based grading, which I did a whole presentation on at tons of conferences this fall, is a whole nother topic actually. But to choose power standards, you want to pick what you believe is the most important things in your curriculum, the things that if you walked out of art, you'd be embarrassed that your students didn't know. So those are the only things in standards-based grading that you actually grade to on the report card, so it comes full circle. So just those are the big concepts you make sure you want to cover. They aren't necessarily a state standard. Those power standards can link back to the state standards. Derek, can you put the free ebook back in the chat? And it's a little after 8:30, so I think if there aren't, let's see, a couple more questions. There's some assessment questions. Use our website, please. There's a pull down with everything we've written on assessment. Use the search bar, search in pretest, post-test. There's examples on there. Assessment's a whole nother topic, and we definitely have some past workshops on SLOs and assessment, and we'll be doing more in the future. So thanks again for everyone for coming to this presentation. And now I just want to talk about a few little AOE heads up FAQs. We have a lot of things going on right now in the AOE headquarters here. And the first is November 1st is a huge day actually, is the deadline for our online conference. If you liked this workshop, the online conference that we hold is going to be on January 25th, and that is in the same exact format, only instead of just hearing me for 20 minutes, every 10 minutes you'll hear a different presenter from around the country. You'll get to hear over 25 presenters from around the country in 5 hours in this format, with asking questions, with links, everything. So this is what the online conference is like. And you will get live interaction with those presenters as well as handouts, and you can watch it for a year after. So anyhow, November 1st, the early bird rate deadline is November 1st. So you can get the conference for $85 instead of $99, and the deadline to pay is November 1st. So get those in if you want to attend the conference. We'll still be taking enrollments up through January. If you can't, we do take a PO from your school. There's been a lot of schools paying for teachers as well. And we also have 5 courses starting on November 1st, our online grad classes. They're HLC accredited. You can get degree 500 level master's credit for these classes. A lot of teachers use them to move up on the salary schedule, to work towards a degree, earn their hours for CPDUs, things like that. And we have a brand new class starting on November 1st, which is what I wanted to tell you about, and it's called Reaching All Students Through Differentiation, which is a topic that, a lot of administrations are coming through and saying, well, are you differentiating? How are you handling the high flyers? How are you making interventions for students who aren't getting concepts? We're going to cover all of that in this differentiation class. It's 3 grad credits, 120 contact hours, and it's brand new. So our new classes usually fill up quite quickly, and I'm really excited about it because we finally get to talk about ELL, English Language Learners. We get to talk about special needs, differentiated assessments. We're going to talk about, it's not choice-based, but it's about changing the way you teach just to meet all the students' needs. So, do you foresee adding any advanced degrees beyond a master's? Someone is asking. And we definitely, our classes can be used towards a master's degree if they accept electives, and with Morningside College, with their online master's in teaching, they can be part of the elective strand. Definitely go to our classes page and check it out and see how it might fit with your needs. Someone else asked, do POs from the schools need to be in by November 1st if you registered back in September? If we need to have a PO from your school by November 1st at that early bird rate in order for us to give you the early bird rate. So any POs that are processed before November 1st will honor the early bird rate, even if the check doesn't come till later. But if your school sends a PO after, then it will be the other rate, the $100, $99 rate. So you'll want to make sure your school kind of gets that PO in. It's a purchase order. Some schools have to pay with a purchase order when paying for things. So that's what a PO is. If you're just a regular art teacher and want to pay with your credit card, you can do that instantly. So let's see. Hopefully that helps. Just email help@theartofed.com and Sarah will help you get through that PO process. I know she's been super swamped lately because we've had tons of people registering. We had about 700 art teachers register for the conference last June, and we're expecting even more this time. So I'm going to stick around for a few more minutes and answer any questions you have about anything AOE related, and we will definitely be here for you and any of your needs, and we're just excited to connect with you. We're headed to Minnesota, and we are going to Duluth for their Art Ed conference in a couple weeks, and we've been kind of all over the country this fall, so excited to head out to San Diego as well and have our own conference this January. All right, thanks. Be sure to email us any questions you have. We're here to help, see what fits your needs, and we'll see you next month for our workshop, and we'll see you online. Thanks again, everybody.